My name is Sarah Kimbrough, and this is the outside of my mask. So I'm going to talk first about the images that I have, which include the Queen of England towards the mouth at the bottom. I also have a home and a homeowner, a white picket fence, representing middle class aspects. Here I have a woman whose face appears bitchy, the resting bitch face, as we may have all heard. And this is a white woman who is volunteering with people of color and taking a selfie. And then over here is more on the physical ability, but very gentle and a little clumsy maybe. Here's a woman with her graduation gown, getting her education. And then at the top is the Virgin Mary, and the forehead area, which often is associated with religion. And then hair, which is often associated with sexuality. I have images of some lesbian women. And to discuss this overall, I want to talk about the fact that the Queen of England near the mouth is to represent my English-speaking privilege. The middle class aspect also affects how I communicate, how I'm perceived, because I'm able to get more jobs that way. The resting bitch face, I think, ties into sexism in the sense that women are meant to be warm and positive, and anything that deviates from that is considered a bitch. Working in the nonprofit, I think I might be perceived as that white woman volunteering, where I'm just doing it for the selfie, sort of a white savior aspect. My ability to play soccer, my able-bodied privilege, and how it's perceived on the field actually ties in with my sex and my gender, because women aren't always perceived the same way. My education obviously has a big impact on how I'm perceived, as well as being able to blend in with the dominant Christian religion. But because of my gender expression, I'm often considered a lesbian, and that's why at the top, my sexuality is more often than not perceived as lesbian. So this is the inside of my mask, obviously a lot more chaotic, but also more fluid, more organic in its movement, a lot smoother. So I'll go over the images again. At the bottom are photos from the Filipino-American War, and I have photos from both sides, the American and the Filipino side. And we talked about this, sort of the American colonialism in the Philippines. I have a group of activists, people of color, advocating for Black Lives Matter. I have this wonderful human in the pink here, as well as interspliced with a very angry woman, and then a more aggressive soccer player than was shown on the outside. And then back to the angry woman. And I have repeating images of this indigenous Filipino woman in both the blue and the white side. And then at the top, in terms of my sexuality, it has the very, very strong man dressed in white and in heels. So in looking at all of these images, I want to talk about, from the bottom to the top, the Filipino-American War. I feel I have an internalized concept of oppression and being the oppressor, knowing that I'm a person of color, but knowing that I also don't perceive as a person of color is an internal conflict that I often have. So I don't know whether I'm allowed to identify as a person of color, or if I'm just a part of the white benefit of the system of oppression and racism. The Black Lives Matter group, that's where I sort of identify as a person of color, but I feel like I'm working within my community. I don't know that that's how it's perceived. The angry woman is because I am often feel like I want to avoid that stereotype of from the outside being perceived as a woman, and if I were to show my anger, I get categorized as a bitch, but that's obviously internalized misogyny, where I am not allowed to show any side other than my soft, warm side. And the queer men are definitely more how I identify my gender and my sexuality. I do appreciate being or feeling like I have this male inside, but that I appreciate female and feminine aesthetics. And so both of those things more accurately represent how I feel on the inside. But because gender is so closely tied with one's sex, I have privilege in appearing cisgendered and inner turmoil because of how I actually identify. To jump back to the front, I'd like to explain why some of the imagery is portrayed in a certain way. I made things very linear and geometric because I feel very calculated and that I need to present myself in a very professional, which is very classist way. Because as a young person and because of ageism, I'm not taken as seriously. So I need to be very, very careful about how I present myself and how professional I need to be. And the eyes are closed on the front of the mask because my white privilege, the white dominance that overtakes the front of the mask, really limits me from being able to see a lot of forms of oppression, and it benefits me in so many, many ways. So the eyes are closed to a lot of oppression in the world. The inside, I chose to be more fluid and circular because a lot of my identities are very fluid. But I also chose blue and white because to throw back and forth between that concept of being multiracial, a person of color, and being white, and how these identities move between that concept. And the eyes are closed on the inside more in rejection to outside labels and stereotypes. And so my inner self closes its eyes to the outside because of how I choose to perceive myself, knowing that it won't be reflected by the outside.